population that's 60% below 30 is being led by outdated morons. Pakistan doesn't have a 911 system. Pakistan does not have a 999 system, a system that you would probably see in the West or in the Middle East, where there's always a first responder available. I sort of decided to do private 911. We realized that Pakistan doesn't have anybody looking after emergency events.
And the energy is eccentric in the room, it's just so phenomenal. And everything starts with the thought, right? Everything is atomic.
A group of terrorists went into a school in Peshawar and they proceeded to kill 140 school children. And that was something that took the entire country by shock. I somehow feel I think I was shamed into it because I took my son out and I put him in a different school. He was also in a military run school. For 7 years, we struggled. We went through 6 near bankruptcies. I couldn't afford my daughter's 5th-year vaccination. You build a society. It doesn't happen. What the youth wants, how they want to be brought into it, and our youth is honorable. Our youth is something that you can rely on, build on. They don't want to be poor. They don't want to be disgraced. They don't want their passport to suck. Your passport is what you make it, right? We're paying for the sins of our past, the sins of our elders. But the present and the future is much more brighter if we get our act together. And for that, we need new leadership, younger leadership. We need people who own the country, who are passionate about it, and they don't own it for themselves. They can be an indirect beneficiary, but they can never be a direct beneficiary. That's the type of servant leadership that you need in this country.
Thank you so much for joining us, Fahad, today.
Thank you for having me.
No, absolutely. I couldn't have thought of anyone else better than yourself with the vision and the mission that you're on, and your team and the energy that I have actually had the opportunity to experience has been phenomenal. So take us through your journey, introduction, actually. What have you been up to? And the personal end with Mohafiz, what you have been doing.
So, okay, at my age, this is going to be a longer introduction. So I'm currently the CEO and founder of Mohafiz by Humane Tech. Humane Tech is the company, and Mohafiz is the brand that we operate with. And what we've done is basically about 10 years ago, we learned something a very hard way where we realized that Pakistan doesn't have anybody looking after emergency events. So in about 2014, a group of terrorists went into a school in Peshawar and they proceeded to kill 140 school children. And that was something that took the entire country by shock. There was a lot of grief. There was a lot of disbelief that something like this could have happened. That too against a military-run school. And for me as a father, that was a pretty strong wake-up call. People are able to move past events, past adversity, even those people who directly go through it. This wasn't an event that I went through directly myself, but I somehow feel I think I was shamed into it because I took my son out and I put him in a different school. He was also in a military-run school, and I moved him into another school where the fee was in dollars, and I was doing well in life at that point. And there was a lot of they were special forces guards and M4 rifles and all of that, and 18-foot walls. But every day when I went to drop him to school, I would cross his old school, and I'd see all of his old class fellows, his former class fellows going inside. And I used to feel really ashamed that just because I could afford it, I could pull my son out. But what about these other kids? And is my child ever going to be truly safe unless society itself is safe? So I did a little bit of searching. I realized that Pakistan doesn't have a 911 system. Pakistan does not have a 999 system, a system that you would probably see in the West or in the Middle East, where there's always a first responder available. In Pakistan, what we had at that time, and we still do, we've only increased that, we had 735 emergency helpline numbers. So when you talk about those So what do you do in an emergency? What jurisdiction are you supposed to be in? How do you know who's going to respond in this particular jurisdiction? So a 911 system really helps because it consolidates everything. And because typically in Pakistan, where you have private education, you have private healthcare, you have private security, I sort of decided to do private 911. And so this is how it started. And in the past 10 years, we've saved more than 15,000 lives. We've handled more than 55,000 emergencies. We're one of those really rare, fortunate startups that that had the ability to learn from bootstrapping because nobody would invest in us. When we started, there wasn't an investment culture in Pakistan. There were no payment gateways, so it was very difficult to collect from consumers. For 7 years, we struggled. We went through 6 near bankruptcies. I couldn't afford my daughter's fifth year vaccination, and but Allah Taala kept us powering through. And even in my darkest nights, I would sometimes break out grinning and smiling because I'd be like, it's with Allah, and tomorrow morning could be a complete game changer. And then 7 years later, it was a game changer, and it became so that we got our first client in the form of Swivel. This is a phenomenal company with phenomenal energy, and they set about taking over the globe with Mustafa Kandil and Shazib. Look at Maha. Can you imagine in a country like Pakistan, a woman running buses because she got so pissed off at people, at women not being able to travel safely and securely? Argentina, and we were expanding with them wherever as their global security provider. So then our journey kept on going in a certain way, where we now serve most of the startups in Pakistan and some of the legacy companies in Pakistan by optimizing the security model that they have for their employees and their families. So this is what we do, and yeah, this is what I've been up to for the past 10 years. Before that, I've had a pretty eclectic sort of a life. I started my career. First job I ever had was as a 17-year-old as a bagger, where I would go where I was when I was living in the US. I would work at a commissary, and I would work on tips. There was no minimum wage. My visa didn't allow that, so I could only work as a part of the gig setup, and I could take whatever I could in the form of tips. So for a year, I earned between $20 to $25 a day in a 4 hour slot by pushing carts and taking groceries, and in a minute's time, uh, coming across to the person that I was serving as somebody who was genuinely, passionate about doing what he was doing. Then after my university, the first job that I had was with KPMG, doing collections on one of their projects. Then I got into Standard Chartered, didn't like banking much. Moved to Saatchi and Saatchi and advertising, where I was part of the Commander Safeguard team that was working on PNG's phenomenal product to bring health and hygiene to the kids in Pakistan. Uh, then I worked in Dubai Ports World for a year, where I learned how shipping and trucking is basically the backbone of Pakistan, and we're a country with 98% of things happening through sea. This is a very strong industry, and I was very fortunate to work under some really great people. Then I got into Total. Total's an oil company, and I was a regional manager for Total for about for good some time for Sindh and Balochistan. My job was basically to authorize gas stations in Sindh Balochistan, and then I made another transition. So you can see I pretty much jumped industry to industry, and then I got into teaching for a bit, taught at a university. And then I got into selling weapons to the armed forces of Pakistan. And that's something that I really enjoyed because I love weapons. I love I love military hardware. It's something that really excites me even today. Um, but then the APS thing happened, and I had to put everything on hold. I was doing really well in the netting business, but then I was at an emotional crossroads, I think, in life, where I could either support the business of killing or get in the business of saving lives. So I chose saving lives.
That's powerful.
Uh,
I can see how a lot of your experiences in multiple industries have formed you or made you the person that you are today. But there is always further back in our early days.
mm.
Why don't you share some of your early life
I
and how it actually formed you and how
mm,
the journey led you up to going to the United States and what was that like?
mm. So, so I was born into one of the privileged families in Pakistan. My father was a military person, and you don't really have a lot of money, but you have a lot of other benefits. So I was exposed to sports a lot. I used to do a lot of squash, tennis, and there was a lot of sports in my life. I was blessed, still blessed, with I think possibly the best parents anybody could ever get. Uh, my father had a huge tolerance for failure, and whatever happened, he would not let our spirit be crushed in any way. So I remember when because I wasn't really too bright of a student. I think I always was like I was off in my own head quite a lot. I used to read a lot, and so that naturally kept me away from grades, the discipline of getting grades. But what really happened was that my father had this huge tolerance for this, right? And when we'd get particularly bad results, we'd all go out for dinner that night, just so that the troops would not lose their morale, you know. And it's just me and my brother. And my parents were like phenomenal, are phenomenal parents. Like my mother, I think I've learned so much of leadership from her, on how to care for people, on how to be emotionally there for people. I saw a very balanced couple who had immense love and respect for one another, and who still have immense love and respect for one another. And they've always been very supportive of their kids. Like our house would be the one house where everybody would come and chill. Um, the house was constantly inundated with guests and friends and relatives and whatnot. And one particular aspect is that my family had this habit of going on car drives every night. So my father was also a pilot, and even when he was commanding a ship, no matter how tired he was, how long he'd flown, how stressful the day, every evening he'd come home and say that your mother's not been out, so let's go out, right?
Wow.
And the four of us would pile into we had a Suzuki FX, like one of these really small cars, right? We would pile into the car, and not, we didn't have a lot of money, but what you would have, we'd get a box of French fries somewhere or an ice cream or whatever. But that is where we bonded as a family. Like that drive every single day was just us being us, no distractions, no devices, no pollution of thought. It was something that we all looked forward to, and it's still the essence of how we conduct ourselves, because that's I think a very strong element. So I was very fortunate. I had very loving parents who showed me early on that the way to go about things is with love, is with respect, is with tolerance, with patience. Yes, everybody has their naughty streak. I think the people who knew me when I was 17 and 18, uh, if they're hearing the if they hear the podcast, if they see their podcast, I don't think they'll believe a word of what I'm saying, because I was terrible to the people around me at that time. Uh, but in my defense, I went to a terrible school, and and where corporal punishment at that time was okay, right? And our school was particularly good at it.
I see.
And me being the daydreamer as much as I was, I had lovely cheeks which could accommodate a lot, right? So I'd get smacked around quite a bit, and I'd take that out on the squash court as much as I could. But then I think I still had a little bit of pent up aggression left in me. So. Um, Yeah, it was interesting for me. It was a lot more interesting for the people around me at that time. But then, you grow as you age and you mature as you age, and you start realizing that there's a phase for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's easier to love people and get them to do things than push them around. But I think there's got to be a little bit of ability to push around people as well.
And I think you just touched on something so beautiful. I was having this discussion with my son, and while all the parents are telling their children, be a good boy, I was telling him, I want you to be a monster. And he was just looking at me, and I'm like, and he was like, what do you mean? And he's now 14 in this month, actually, next month, July.
Inshallah.
And you see, if you don't see bad, you don't have the tendency to identify bad, right?
Yeah.
And some of us are privileged, and you, as you mentioned, right, you have to experience the bad and the naughty to decide whether you want to be continuing on to be naughty or you want to do something in that other direction.
I personally feel that my parents really struck a really good balance. They tolerated naughtiness. They didn't tolerate bad manners. They didn't tolerate bad manners. So I've never been open to bad manners. You can be naughty. You can be whatever you want. But there's no excuse for bad manners. And that's something that I try and bring out as much as possible. Sometimes, yes, everybody is human. Everybody struggles. Everybody has their problems. I do. I struggle a lot with a lot of things. There's still a huge alpha in me constantly. But I think one of the main positives in life is, again, you learn from everything that you do, right? So sports is a huge thing. Sports teaches you how to fail gracefully, but it also teaches you how to compete and how much better it is to win. So that's something that I've always done and appreciated. So one of the things that I didn't have when I was discovering myself in school, it wasn't really a focus, but I knew one thing, and I still believe it. Mediocrity is a crime. It's a sin. You don't want to go into your grave with unused parts. You want to be like, you want to fight the fight and fight it at a good level, at a good volume. And
do justice with what you've been given.
Absolutely. I think the only thing is, when you get to the other side, and at the side of if the quality of the reception on the other side is better, then I think that would be the truest form of achievement. And to do that, you've got to live your life. You can't pass through it.
Yeah, no, and I think what you touched on, the fundamental parts of being blessed with the parents who actually can strike the balance. So when I was done with my son, I told him, I want you to be a monster and then learn to control it. And this is where you get to the level where you know that you can squash, but on principle, if it's not right, you walk away, or you just be the bigger person. And that really comes from the soft, not so very apparent, skills or experiences we experience growing up.
No, because when you are naughty with people around you, they're naughty with you in turn, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a full circle. And a well-rounded life is where you've been bullied as well, and you've done all of those things together. But ultimately, I really enjoy the fact that I've had a full life. Like, it's one of those things that I've not. So when I started Mohafiz, about a year before Mohafiz, I started listening to Allama Iqbal a lot. Right, so he's one of the philosophers. He's the philosopher for this region, and there's this particularly powerful set performed in the form of a qawwali, which is shikwa and jawab is shikwa. So it's man's complaint and then Allah responding, right? And for a year, my commute was pretty long, so it was about 45 minutes, and that would make 90 minutes on the road every day. And for whatever reason, somehow, from the age of 29 to 33, I was going through extreme anxiety. My uncle had passed away suddenly from cancer, and he was one of the most timid people I'd ever met in my life. He was an army officer, ex-army officer, but whenever they would travel, my aunt would carry the gun. So he was that timid, right? And one of the things that I came face to face was that whether you like it or not, you're going to go. So then, what is the purpose of life, right? And then I realized over 4 years' time, and then when I started getting hooked to this, was that a beautiful death is what you crave, right? What is a beautiful death? The quality of your reception on the other side. And how do you get a good reception on the other side? By doing good for others around you, by serving humanity, by serving people. And because I was doing weapons at that time and all of that, and I was doing really well, alhamdulillah, at that time. And Allah showed me a lot of money at that time, and showed me a lot of power, showed me a lot of grace, traveling around the world, going to different defense exhibitions, loving it all. Um, I became such a spoiled brat where there was a time when I would choose the type of aircraft that was flying on that route just for the nature of the business class seat. Can you imagine like being that bratty at that age? And then Allah Ta'ala gave me a very strong lesson. And what I learned at that time was, so when all of this was happening, everything was good, everything was hunky dory. I was still going through this anxiety of why am I here, right? And a lot of people would say that why can't you just be thankful for whatever was happening? But in that state, you're not really thankful. You're just like wondering, and you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And and I somehow got hooked to Allama Iqbal, and my prayer sort of became that please allow me to do two things. One, let me pursue some sort of activity or commerce that would allow me to stand tall in front of you when I come, right? And two, for which I don't have to bow in front of any other human being while I'm alive. And and for 7 years, I think I was really tested. Um, and and now I say this to everybody going through whatever adversity. You've just got to get up one more time after the punch. You've just got to outlast that punch. Like you've just got to survive one more punch that life is able to throw at you, and you'll make it out fine on the other end. And if you don't, you die. It's okay. It's part of it. But when you're in the fight, it's okay to take punches. But yeah, so I told you it would be a long one.
No, I think it's amazing, and you just touched on something. I'm at this stage where I think last year I bought myself Kulliyat Iqbal, and I started to study it. But then I came across this YouTube video which does a really good job in translating it into first the Roman Urdu as well, because my Urdu is a bit rusty, and then at the same time there's a translation, right? And I went through it, and now at this stage everybody in the team has gone through Shikwa and Jawab Shikwa. And kid you not, just a couple of days ago, my nephew and niece, they got the assignment at the end of July. They are to simplify Shikwa and Jawab Shikwa, and they are to present it in the shape of a presentation to our entire wider family. And they are just 12 and 11, or 10, So two of them are like, first they have to digest it all, and they have this task at hand. And I think what Allama Iqbal has done 110 years ago, about approximately 112 years ago, when he wrote,
take a few,
when he done Shikwa, we happen to see that on a global level happening, same thing happening right now as we speak, So this is something I didn't know, and we have another thread in common. My question here is, right, what do you think made your parents the way they were, and what were the ingredients that you think are transferable, or somehow we can convert them into a framework or a toolkit that can be passed on and can be preserved, as a matter of fact? What is your take on that?
So I learned from love. My parents saw a lot of adversity as well. So my father, in his own, like in his parents' marriage, my grandfather used to play bridge and I think he wasn't really a strong player because he'd lose a lot of money on it, and I think that would lead to a lot of contention and everything, which is why my father always wanted to keep the family structure very closely knit, very strongly intact and all. And my mother saw the fall of Dhaka. So the thing is, so growing up, doing what I do now, you have to remember one thing. There's a lot of hate for there's a lot of hate going around. There's a lot of anger at a particular institution right now. But you have to realize that once you're a part of it and you're part of the junior setup, you don't see a lot of it. You don't see a lot of it because all you see is service. You see dedication. You see a lot of people giving up their lives to serve the country. Because you can't take that away from them. You can't take that away from them. You can't take this spirit of sacrifice away from the armed forces, the junior officers, and all. You can't. Like you cannot say that anybody who gave his life in the past 20 years in whatever service to the country or whoever fought in Kargil was that 22-year-old gave his life hoping that you and I would get our act together. 100%. Right? You cannot diss their memory. Mm-hmm. Right? And this is something that I say to a lot of armed forces officers, that for armed forces officers, when they lose a colleague to battle, to the rigors of war, they don't they probably don't process it as much, and they probably think of it as hazards of the trade. What they don't see is the effect it takes on the families. Like growing up, there was a crash, and we prayed the funeral prayers of 36 people in different stages over the course of 2 months, right? And you know them, you know their kids, you play with them, right? And suddenly, that, because in the armed forces, the culture is uncle and auntie. So that uncle is not coming home anymore. You see auntie grieving, you see the kids wandering around. Father, yeah. And then you start questioning, what is this country worth? Right? And, there's this great dialogue in Kingdom of Heaven where Salahuddin Ayyubi says, Evelyn asks him, what is Jerusalem to you? Salahuddin turns around and says, nothing. And then he stops and he says, everything. Wow. Right? Yeah. So for me particularly, listen, my great-grandfather, my paternal grandfather, he came in a train, sitting on top of the train with a Sten gun because he opted for the Royal Pakistani Air Force. And my grandmother was sitting inside the train with my eldest aunt, right? So they migrated from India. My maternal grandfather went from Bihar to Dhaka, and then 71 from Dhaka to Pakistan. So my family has uprooted itself, my lineage has uprooted itself 3 times to come to this country. So this country means everything to me. Beautiful. It is that way.
That's awesome. So touching back on Mohafiz, so you mentioned that private 911. I love that concept. I think it's very noble as well, and it has got to that state that someone has to do it privately, and we are going to come out of it, inshallah, with the people like you. So what exactly Mohafiz currently doing? How is the verticals? What are the segments that you are targeting? So if you were to break it down for us, that'd be great.
There are 3 verticals. One is, so the core premise at Mohafiz is to make businesses and humans safer and more secure in emerging markets. So when you say that, we serve a lot of business clients in our business activities. We're optimizing security. It's been very inefficient. You don't need a security manager constantly as a part of your setup. It's a continued cost. You can pay a fraction of that cost, and we'll give you security on demand We're not doing guards. We're doing all risk mitigation. We're looking after infrastructure. We're looking at reinforcements. We're looking at guards management. We're looking at crisis resolution. We're looking at conducting investigations and frauds, but on a turnkey solution. So it's like a co-working space where you just go in and plug and play. This is how security is becoming with Mohafiz as your partner. And we've seen phenomenal growth, alhamdulillah. We've grown 29 times in a span of 18 months. Some of all of the big startups in Pakistan, or even the aspirational startups that have big visions, big dream, they're all choosing us instead of having their own team. And even legacy companies are now outsourcing it because they realize that you have a team sitting inside 365 days a year, handling, only being busy for about 30 of those days. Whereas you can pay a fraction of the cost and you have a team that handles more than 60 to 70 security incidences a day. So can you imagine this team being super trained, super efficient, handling things so well, and doing it at the fraction of a cost of maintaining your own team? This is, and because it is a helpful solution, and we're all across Pakistan now. We've operated in Egypt, we've operated in all of these countries. A lot of companies are realizing the sense that this is somewhere where they can get savings, but also get really robust security. So that's the first vertical. The second vertical, which we're really excited about, is going towards, so you have 15 million Pakistanis living outside of Pakistan, and they're the largest contributor sometimes to the economy of Pakistan. They send in $22 billion worth of remittances on average, and again, they're away from this country. They're putting in their sweat, blood, labor, everything that they have, just to make sure that their families have some sort of life in Pakistan. So we're going to be serving those people in looking after their families here. So while they're working over there, any emergency happens, we'll be the people who stand up for the families, stand with the families, take them through the emergency, take them through whatever. It could be requiring medical evacuation for your parents, medical intervention for your parents, ambulation, hospitalization, road traffic accident, somebody trying to break into your house, interfacing with the police, all of that, going and checking on your property. If it's been, how there's this problem where people go and, do a land grab while you're gone. So it's sort of like while you were sleeping, you wake up poor. but something like that. But that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be serving these people so that they can serve, so that their next generation lives without fear. It has, and their older generation is able to age in place. They don't have to go through the rigors of life. They don't have to be dependent on an ambulance that will never come. They don't have to be dependent on a system that won't work for them. They will have access to Mohafiz that will help them look after their families, their parents, their children, their siblings, whoever they want, at a very minimal cost, right? And this is something that I believe will add a lot of value to these 15 million Pakistanis outside of Pakistan. So yeah, these two verticals, and then there's a CSR vertical that's very close to my heart. It's called Mohafiz Junior. Mohafiz handles the here and now, the emergencies of today. Mohafiz Junior is working on the Pakistan of the future. So Pakistan at 2047 is what I'm trying to live for. Let's see what Allah Ta'ala has planned, right? But I want Pakistan to come out of its misery and have this phenomenal youth, have these phenomenal kids come out who are switched on, who are great Samaritans, not good Samaritans, right? Who are great human beings and who are building an identity for this country which becomes a global brand. Pakistan right now looks very bleak. But if we work on the children today, we're going to have a great Pakistan in 20 years. And that is what we're doing with Mohafiz Junior. We go into schools, we teach children how to save lives. The thought process is if they're saving them, they won't take them.
Beautiful.
Two, if they know and respect one another and they love one another, they will not take what's not theirs. They will not covet. They will not do the things that whatever our religion tells them to do, to be honorable human beings. And I hope when all of these forces, all of these things that we're doing converge, you're going to have a Pakistan that's honorable, that's reliable, that's trustworthy, where you look at each other. You don't worry about your child because you're worrying about somebody else's child and somebody else is worrying about your child. It's a community raising a child. And that's what I want to do. So we're trying to create switched on human beings, who will. So I'm pretty hopeful. Yes, it's pretty bleak right now, and sometimes I gust like crazy. It's almost like they want you to lose faith in your country, and it's almost like they want you to, really, really succumb to the pressures. But like I was saying the other day, in Pakistan, you have to work 270 to 300 times harder to make a dollar.
Yes.
But that's the escape velocity, right? That's the escape velocity that's required. The day you achieve escape velocity out of this, can you imagine what you're going to create? This is 240 million people. And you look at some of the Pakistanis who've had a good upbringing, right? A lot of people say that there's an elite capture and everything. Yes. So now you've identified the problem. Let's make more elites. Let's make social mobility a part of every corporate endeavor. Don't just worry about your employees and what they're giving to the company, but worry about what you're doing for their children. Take it to that next level. Make sure that their education is great. Do it for the office boy. Do it for everyone. You build a society. It doesn't happen. There is structure behind it. There is thought behind it. There is passion, and then there is dedication, and then there's resilience. You need all of that to make a country. But once you've done it, you think Pakistanis will stay behind? No.
That is so powerful. You are a man on the mission, but not just a mission. You have a plan to execute it as well, and I think it's very powerful. And I want to add one more thing. You just reflected on something so powerful. There is a book, Good to Great by Jim Collins.
Yeah.
And the beginning of that book, it says, good is the biggest enemy of great.
Yeah.
And I connect this with Allama Iqbal when he said, Nahi tera nasheman kasre sultani ki gumbat par, tu shahi hai basera ka pahadon ki chata. So I think that sentiment literally, just hit me. And I have goosebumps listening to you. You have a lot of conviction, in what you say. So I love that fact. And the second thing we were talking about just as the episode started, about the energy, and the energy is eccentric in the room, it's just so phenomenal. And, everything starts with the thought, right? Everything is atomic. And if something that can happen in mind, it has already happened.
Yeah.
You just got to find a way to make it happen with perseverance, with the right people around you, with the right energy to attract. So that is so powerful. So I love what you just touched on, with what you are helping the startup ecosystem or the businesses. So not only they strive, but attract foreign investment as well into the country, because now you're creating that safe haven. So you do need that money to develop the infrastructure that you talk about. Second thing, combining the expats, being an expat myself, if I know someone who is going to take care of everything that is needed that you're not able to do, because there's a sacrifice element, there's a quality of life that you actually trade off when you live abroad and try to provide something for your loved ones. And knowing that there is a reputable, really, people who really give a shit, excuse my French, who are going to actually do justice with it, as opposed to paying our relatives who actually think that they are doing you a favor. In reality, that's not the case. So I think that's
sometimes the people that we leave our family to are sometimes the worst miscreants. It's sad. We see a lot of this in recent times. There have been a lot of cases where parents were brutally murdered in their sleep by their own house help, by their own family members, who knew that because the child was at least 24 hours away, nobody would even discover if they made a getaway.
Wow.
So, and the way this society is evolving, the way all of this is happening, the way the economy is going, you're seeing a trickle down effect everywhere. You're seeing structures break down, like family structures, social structures, norms that once we were proud of, that, culturally were very strong, and we used to have a little bit of pride about that, right? That, you don't get that in the West. Well, now you get honor in the West. You don't get it here.
100%.
So again, you have to build that society, and for that you need to have. There's one thing that you said about us having a plan to execute. We don't have a plan to execute. We already have a playbook. We've already been doing it for 10 years. We already know how to handle lives and how to handle emergencies. We know how to plan a funeral for somebody who's not even in Pakistan, and for them to just come over while their parents have gone, and to make sure that the parents realize that, somebody stood by them in their last hours, right? We've developed that capability. So capability of execution is one thing. Capability of loving the people that you're serving is something different, and that's what we bring out, right? But to be honest, when you look at all the things that you say, I've always believed that prayer is a strong thing, but hope without a plan is suicide. So if you don't have a plan to execute on, there's no method to the madness, and there's only hope. Hope is great, but then you need to have an execution plan. So when you talk about startups, and when you look at so many startups, everybody has an idea, and trust me, when we started, 8 other companies had this idea. 7 didn't stay because it takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot out of you. It takes a lot when you're not able to do salaries for the longest time. But there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I always knew that once the e-commerce set up and all of these new businesses would set up, people will have something that other people will want. And when people covet, you will have an opportunity to help. And that's what Mohafiz was waiting, and this is what we got. So you've got to have a plan. When you talk about Pakistan, do you think Pakistan can't be fixed? The economy of Pakistan is made up of 2 elements. One is the declared economy, and one is the undeclared economy, right? So look at Pakistan like you look at a joint family system. So Pakistan has a number of families, right? In every joint family system, if there are 3 sons, right, the parents put in the money to raise the 3 children, right? Now, if one of those children, when all 3 start earning, 4 incomes need to be coming into the house. That increases the quality of life, the lifestyle of the family as a whole, that family structure, right? But if one kid declares everything that he's making and 2 don't, right? You see their individual standard of living increasing, but the house doesn't increase the standard of living. So Pakistan is exactly like that joint family system. We're going heavy against the people who are declaring their wealth. We're not going after those people who are not declaring their wealth. If we had equality in terms of application of the law, you would have this, right? It would make sense. Can you imagine Tim Hortons opens up in Pakistan and has the largest opening it's ever seen in its history? You have Hublot opening up. You can get anything that you want, any car that you see anywhere in the world, you'll see on the streets of Pakistan. And then you say we're a poor country. That's just stupid, right? That's just stupid. I think somebody needs to take responsibility for making the country. We've just evolved, right? It's like we've exploded. We've not even evolved, and we've grown like a turd. It's an example that I give is that of the dog, right? You have 3 types of dogs. You have a dog that is raised inside the house, and you have him going through all the house breaking in and all of that, and they learn quicker. They learn not to make a mess inside the house. They learn how to shake hands and roll over and do all of those things. Then you have the dog outside in the lawn, and that dog can do guard work. It will listen to basic commands. It will come and heel and walk and all of those things. It'll do that, right? Sit, roll over, whatever. And then there's a street dog, right? A stray, and that's the only dog that looks sideways because it's insecure. This is the difference. Is The first dog has direct supervision, good or bad. The second dog is less supervised. The third dog is completely left to his own whims. He doesn't have a pack. He doesn't have any family. This is what we've done with this country. Our people are rudderless because there is no leader. Our elders have just fought one another. And can you imagine a population that's 60% below 30 is being led by outdated morons, by people who have absolutely no idea what the youth wants, how they want to be brought into it. And our youth is honorable. Our youth is something that you can rely on, build on. They don't want to be poor. They don't want to be like disgraced. They don't want their passport to suck. Your passport is what you make it, right? We're paying for the sins of our past, the sins of our elders. But the present and the future is much more brighter if we get our act together. And for that, we need new leadership, younger leadership. We need people who own the country, who are passionate about it, and they don't own it for themselves. They can be an indirect beneficiary, but they can never be a direct beneficiary. That's the type of servant leadership that you need in this country. The role of the government is to make people successful. In Pakistan, you'll meet a lot of startups and you'll see that whatever success they're accruing is in spite of and despite of the government. It's not because of the government. Everywhere else, you read Startup Nation and you read up the story of Israel, and you then see why Israel is able to get away with so many things, simply because they've brought method to the madness. We don't read as a country. But if you've not read Netanyahu's biography, Bibi, what have you read? There are two countries on the planet that were founded on a religious ideology. One is Pakistan, the other is Israel. Look at where they are, look at where we are.
Powerful.
Having brought in Allama Iqbal, like you just quoted, we've gone back to doing what? We have started questioning, wouldn't it be better if we'd never gotten partition? Why? Why would you want to, as Muslims who finally gotten a homeland, should you not be personifying the best of Islam? So you keep on working at it. Societies don't get it together, but you work at it and you do it with sincerity. You don't do it for your son or your daughter. You do it for society because your son and daughter are part of society. And when you grow as that, then you become something big. So this is what we're...
No, I love it. And you know what? Things are very cyclical, right? There are short cycles. There are, long, large cycles. And then when you talk about, working on your third vertical, so you address the problem. So you work on whatever the first aid that's needed here and now. You live practically. You need to be radically practical as well while you are visioning. So it's like, Steve Jobs used to say, it's the thinkers and doers who actually make this world a better place, right? So I love the way how you have incorporated in the strategy of Mohafiz, that you are addressing here and now burning questions and problems, addressing the solution, addressing with the solution that you have already, is streamlined and they're working very well. And then you're working on Mohafiz Junior. And you are creating that force, right? Because, up until age of 5, you're already developed. Your foundations are set. And most of us here in Pakistan, I have noticed, parents actually very educated, successful from the worldly, eye. They think that they're going to sit the children down and they're going to just tell them that, hey, this is the right thing to do and learn from and give them the lecture. Children absorb their environment. They are like sponges.
Bro, with being a father, I've realized they don't listen to a word you say.
Yeah.
They pick up on everything that you do.
100%.
So my change in life was with my kids, because I realized there was a sponge in the room, and that sponge is picking up everything. How I deal with people, how I talk to people. I was like, bro, I've got to be a better human being in front of him, right? And then in that process, you're constantly upgrading yourself.
Yes.
So yeah.
So I just love it, and I could not have, as I said at the beginning as well, I could not have thought of a better guest than yourself to be
No, there
starting
are
the
plenty of
Pakistan.
people. I'm literally like the bottom of the barrel right now.
I like the humility, and to be honest, this is being humble. It goes a long way, and I love it. And this is what we are trying to do with Upish Live as well. When we turn towards Pakistan, when everybody else looking away, and people are like, why? What do you?
But so look at all the positives also, right? Look at people like Hamza at Bazaar or Saad at Bazaar, or look at the team at Bazaar. Look at companies like Bus Karo. Look at Mahat. Can you imagine in a country like Pakistan, a woman running buses because she got so pissed off at women not being able to travel safely and securely?
Yes.
Right? Being deprived of the chance to work simply because they could not commute effectively. Look at Essen. Look at Munib at Baikia. Like, do you realize he's added 40,000 people to the workforce?
Yeah.
Like a secondary source of income in a country like Pakistan. Do you see Mudassir Sheikha, who's created an entire economy for white-collar workers who just wanted to get a pay raise?
Yeah.
Can you imagine the type of energy that's coming into Pakistan?
Yes.
Like, if we were to go into the truly Islamic system, which is a free market system, and you allowed companies to run with good regulation, right? With good regulating, right? I don't see Pakistan being economically weak. All you've got to do is work on the safety and security of the people, which Mohafiz is doing, and hopefully the government will do, inshallah, also. Because they're also our own people, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing. There's like we're all in it together. If a Pakistani is disgraced at an airport somewhere because of his passport, it's shame on all of us. It's not him alone, right? It's not. If a worker is treated poorly anywhere in the world, that's shame on us. I remember when I was in the US, anytime we'd have this story, right, where we'd have somebody talking about somebody who pulled a con or something, everybody would just turn around and say, oh, must have been a Pakistani. And we'd all laugh. And I wouldn't. I wouldn't laugh at that because why are you trivializing it? Like, do you not realize the brand that you're building? And why are you, first, shame on him for doing it, but shame on us for not frowning upon it, for taking it as a joke. This country isn't a joke. This is your homeland. This is your identity. And people say that Pakistan doesn't have an identity, but then you make one. If it doesn't have a history, you make a future. But you don't roll over and die.
100%.
So and there's so many people adding to it. You think the person sitting in a cantonment somewhere in an internal security outfit is enjoying being away from his family? Do you think he enjoys sitting on a hill? Why do you think he's doing it? I remember a time when in the military, you would come home in the afternoon, sleep for 2 hours, go for games in the evening, sit in the mess, enjoy a mess life, spend time with your kids, go socialize. You had very little money, but you had a lot of life. When I look at the young officers of today, they've not spent any time with their families. They've literally seen their children flat. They've not seen them up because they're constantly overworked. When you look at the people on the street, and you see people acting like hooligans, you don't say shame on them. You can. This is what we do. But shame on us, the privileged. If I did not raise the quality of life of the people that I work with or the people that I'm surrounded by, if I did not add social mobility to their lives, upwards mobility, if the future generation is not at least one up on the previous generation, what did my life mean at all?
Love it.
So okay, this love it throws me off. but the problem is that
it is it's beautiful. It's powerful. I love it.
Bro, so like I go through this exercise in our office, which we call like, what's your epitaph going to be like? And so there's some funny ones, right? Like, so again, I told you we have a little bit of morbid humor.
Yeah.
So one of them is, for me, I'm done. The second one is, Maulvi Saab galat the. Third is, don't worry, I'll see you tonight. And my personal favorite is finally losing weight. So it's all of that. But This is life. It's going to have its ups and downs. And right now, our country is in a bad place. But do you think we'll stay that way? Do you think the Pakistanis that are right now here, the people who are sitting in this room, they're all not switched on? Bro, they're just waiting for an opportunity. We're just waiting for for things, and we will have our time. And that time is going to be great. We're not doing it for our children anymore. We're doing it for Pakistan because that is what we all own. We could be living anywhere in the world. This is the identity that people ascribe to us. Let's make this a great identity.
Love it. Just before closing, I have one question, and that is, what is one question you wish people ask more about Mohafiz that they don't?
What do you guys do? because the thing is, the nature of the work that we do, uh, you won't see a lot of posts on us. You won't see a lot of things because we value the safety and security of our clients and also the information that we have, right? So we're very, very particular on what we do. And this isn't like an e-commerce startup, right? It isn't where you order a vehicle and if it doesn't show up, you get another one. When Mohafiz steps up, it means business, right? So for that, we have to be very clear on how we perform. And we promise a 90% SLA, but we deliver a 99% SLA. And 99 is also a little bit of just not, we don't want to be cocky. But the one thing that I've realized is I wish more people would ask, what does Mohafiz do? But I really don't wish that much, in the sense that when people hear about us, they want us. And that's a responsibility on us that we take very seriously. So we work with great brands. We work with people who are really serious about their businesses, their families, their lives, and who want better outputs. So, yeah.
And last, aspiring entrepreneurs, founders, and children who would consume this podcast, what is the key message that you want to give to them about their personal journey, personal why, and what you have already touched on, that in terms of what's Pakistan's future? What would be that key message you would like to leave the audience with?
Your surrounding is what you make it. Whatever surrounds you is what you make it. You are powerful. You have the power to change. You want to stop, when you want to stop crime, it's you. You want to help somebody, it's you. You see a poor man on the street, you see an elderly person on the street, and you don't see your father in them or your mother in them, that's on you. You don't see that. You see a woman struggling on the road, and you see somebody harassing her, and you don't see your sister or your wife in that woman, that's on you, right? So you are the world, you are the universe. Pakistan is just a vehicle. It will only be known for what you make it, right? So whatever you want to do, you want to be successful, you want to be whatever, do that well. And two, work on your communities. Work on your communities. Work on yourself. Read a lot. So a reader can't be bored. And a reader will always have an imagination. And a lot of people say that I listen to books and I listen to that, or I do something. Read it at your own pace. Take the books in. Assimilate. Enjoy them. Enjoy the power of words. Speeches have changed the world. Like, London was bombed for, I think, 47 nights consecutively during World War II. And it was only the image of the Union Jack on Big Ben that kept everybody motivated, right? And these people were still partying at night in the tube stations, in the underground, tracks of the underground, and they came out of it. And do you want to know how World War II was won?
Educate us.
The will of one man.
Love it.
Churchill. Hitler only feared one man, and that was Churchill. And Church, if you've not read anything, and if you have the power, read the history of the Second World War that Churchill has written, and how he builds the coalition, how he rallies the troops. He came in at a time when the previous prime minister wanted to throw in the towel.
Mhm.
It was a policy of appeasement. And look at that speech, look at the power of the words. We will not, we will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them in the streets. Can you imagine oratory more powerful than that? And he galvanized a nation, and they brought the world together to fight their battle. It wasn't about Europe anymore, it was about the salvation of that island.
Mhm.
And they brought in the Americans, and they brought in whoever that they needed to. And it was all Churchill. So one man, and this is what I want to tell your people, one man with the right vocational skills, the ability to orate, to have the right oratory skills, the ability, the heart to do it all is going to be enough for our country.
Mhm.
This country can come out of anything.
Thank you so much. Power
Yeah.
of one man, and if you gotta conquer anything in your life, conquer yourself. Conquer your
Absolutely.
mind, and you'll be able to do whatever you put your mind to. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you
It's
for
been
having me.
it's been a pleasure. Thank you once again.
No, thank you.
Thank you.